Welcome to Newrealities. I'm Alan Steinfeld, and I'm back with Helen Kramer, who has some very interesting information about transforming our lives. So today's program is going to be about emotional education and how to liberate ourselves from our old behavior. So thank you, Helen, for being here. Emotional education, you mean we need to understand how we react to our emotions?
Well, I think that up until recently, we didn't really understand how our emotional reactions are formed and therefore how they could be transformed. So we're going to have a video of you interviewing me about my book on neuroplasticity and liberating the adult within. And I go into detail about one discovery that I made, which is that for most of our time on the planet, we lived in mortal danger, and like all other living beings, we needed to have a hair trigger response to fear. Unfortunately,
In order to survive.
That's right.
And we needed that rush but in today's society, as you're saying, we interpret stress.
The brain misreads. The brain actually misreads stress as danger and hijacks the signals to this primitive fight, flight, or freeze part of the brain, which is most active in infancy and childhood before we have cognitive development.
So if I'm running late for an appointment and I'm stressed about it, my body's interpreting that in my brain as fear, mortal danger.
That's right. And so what happens is the fear part of the brain runs the show. And so,
because it wants to survive. That's its positive intent.
Its positive intent is to survive, except you're not in mortal danger.
If you're running late for an appointment, that's right.
So you're going into this extreme melodramatic state, and I always say there's a difference between a zebra and a man, okay? If a zebra escapes because there was a lion that came into the herd, the zebra goes into, let's say, a quiet plain, and animals shake. Mm-hmm. They shake out all the chemicals that were produced when they were frightened. And then they graze peacefully.
But if a man is pursued by a lion...
No, but if a man's in a plane, okay, and there's turbulence, and he gets scared, he lands and then he says, oh my God, I fly all the time. Do I have enough life insurance? What's going to happen to my children? And we use our cognitive brain to actually fuel the fear because nobody taught us how to shut down that part of the brain.
So how do we shut down that part of the brain? It seems like a natural response to conditions.
Okay. It's not a natural response to feel like a little child. It's not a natural, it's not an effective response to feel like a child who's in danger because you're late for a meeting, and then instead of problem solving, like who should you call or how should you handle it, you're going into panic mode. So, and I always say that when the stress signals are hijacked into that part of the brain, we always get a reaction that's the opposite of what we need. But because so much of the behavior makes us look childlike, we started to make psychological interpretations, but it's a physiological response. It's not your fault that your brain takes you back to childhood experience where you're feeling vulnerable and where you don't have resources.
Right, but we blame ourselves that it is our fault. Why did I react that way?
And our culture blames us. So if you overeat because you're depressed, then you beat yourself up, I'm out of control, when you're not realizing that your brain is saying, you got to get rid of this stress somehow. So you might drink too much or have fights with people or overeat. And so the first thing is to stop blaming yourself because you didn't control the brain's lack of evolution. The brain has not caught up with our contemporary lifestyle, which is how do we deal with stress, okay? Well, how do we deal with stress? Part of the way we deal with stress is to be heart-centered. If you're in a compassionate state or a loving state...
For yourself, you mean? Or for who?
If our whole culture was teaching us...
But they're not.
I know, and that's why we have to join together and form a different kind of energy. Because if we're in a heart-centered state, which is a state we're born into, then it turns off that fear part of the brain. And then the cognitive brain becomes an asset because, okay, now what should I do? I'm late. You know, who should I call, or what can I do about the meeting or the presentation? And we just problem solve efficiently.
So if we don't do that, if we are stressed because we're running late and we're worried like, oh, I might lose my job or something, all these chemicals are still running in our body. And then when we finally arrive, we're still suffering from the stress and the fear. So the thing you're saying to do is, in that moment, if we're running late, is to say, okay, I'm relaxed, there's nothing I can do, there's traffic, and it's going to be okay one way or the other.
Yeah, and you're not going to die.
Right, by running late for a meeting. But the fear and the stress makes it into a mortal danger.
Right, and that's one of the things that we have to learn is that our brain will spit out fearful thoughts forever. It just reacts. It's as I said before, it's a reflex, like when the doctor hits you under the knee and your leg drums. Your brain is just reflexive. We deify the brain. We say, oh, yes, I have to pay attention because that thought came up. And I want to tell you, don't pay attention to those thoughts because they're thoughts that were implanted from traumatic or painful experiences in childhood that have nothing to do with you now. And so you're reliving your childhood vulnerability and fearfulness over and over again, and then you never have a now. Right now, I'm a competent adult, and if I'm a little bit late, people know me. It's not a lynch mob.
Right.
And so you can talk yourself through it. But know that your brain is always going to do that. It's
always going to be reactive. So the idea is to be present. So if you are running late, that's just an example, then you're present. You're feeling, you might still have the reaction from the brain, but you're not indulging the reaction. Is that what you're saying?
Every time you follow it, you strengthen it.
Right.
And there are some other issues in the brain. See, why I believe in emotional education, even though I'm a licensed psychoanalyst, I don't use that kind of a model because I believe if we're taught to use our brain differently, then we can make all the changes that we need to right now. Now, like one of the problems that we have as human beings is that our cognition develops as we age chronologically, but our emotions don't.
Our emotions don't develop.
No. So if
they get stuck at a childhood.
In that reactive part of the brain.
There's no emotional development as we mature.
Not automatically.
Not physiologically.
Yeah, like if I'm playing ball with a very young child and I put the ball behind my back, the child at a young age won't look for it. When the cognition clicks in, they'll run around and they'll look for it. But an adult who feels abandoned when their mother goes out or leaves them or goes on a business trip or something, that feeling of abandonment doesn't mature as we get older and we're more capable of taking care of ourselves. So I can have a woman come in and say a man broke a date and she feels abandoned, and so that emotion gets stuck. So what I teach people is I teach them replacement emotions.
Yes, go through that.
Yeah. So I wrote about this person in my book, where she talked about feeling abandoned, and then I asked her, what would it feel like if you said I was disappointed? Because when she felt abandoned, she got angry at her boyfriend who had to work that night. Then they fought all week. And I asked her, what is it like if you say I feel disappointed? And she felt totally different. She said, oh, if I had said I felt disappointed, he would have said me too, and we would just have rescheduled.
And that's actually more the truth, that she actually did feel disappointed, and not abandoned.
But the stress of disappointment triggered
the child,
the reactive brain.
So we have to grow ourselves up emotionally, don't we?
We have to be taught how to.
And so this is by all through our lives, whatever triggers us, we need to find a replacement for that trigger?
That reflects who we are now and the world we're living in now.
Is this what's emotional dyslexia? I know that's part of your book.
That's what I was talking about before when I said the stress signals get hijacked to the fear part of the brain.
Oh.
It's physiological, like the learning disability, dyslexia, what causes people to write letters backwards, but with emotional dyslexia, your reaction is backwards. You have a melodramatic reaction that will only complicate things, and it's the opposite of what you need in the moment.
So the base level is be present with your feelings and don't be reactive. Would you say that's?
Find a replacement. And like in my book, I give all kinds of replacements. I have charts and examples. And just know that your brain is going to be reactive. And the important is, don't blame yourself. Don't blame yourself if you went out of control, or you got so frightened that you overate, or you drank, or you withdrew, or you didn't show up because you felt so embarrassed about something. So the whole idea is to stop blaming ourselves.
But we also want to change our behavior, though.
You can't change your behavior when you're blaming yourself.
So, but okay, so we don't blame ourselves. You say, okay, my brain made me overeat or drink alcohol. Then what do? You
find a replacement behavior, and I mean, this is what I do with people all the time.
Right.
Like, so you find if you're feeling like you need comfort, can you do something else that's soothing for you? Can you call a friend, or even remember a time that you were with a friend where the friend was very affirming, and just relive that experience so you feel the calmness of having a caring person around.
So if I'm not feeling good about myself, where I won't have to overeat, I don't have to drink alcohol, the replacement behavior would be to do something, even watch a sunset or call a good friend.
Well, what I really believe is that you have to create positive experiences before you're upset, because when you're already triggered, it's hard to bring yourself back.
So go for those, implant them in your mind.
Do them as meditations.
And actually, Helen has a bunch of at least one good one that is going to be released on this channel that you can look for. That one's called what?
Unconditional love, receiving unconditional love.
Thank you, Helen, again, for being a guest on New Realities.
Okay, my
Helen
pleasure.
Kramer, HelenKramer.com. If you have any questions, you can go to her website. Look for a series of clips that will be released where Helen goes through different processes, including oral sex, that you can learn from, or understanding that.
That was a little titillating, huh?
I guess so. Thanks for watching. I'm Alan Steinfeld. Good night.